And she's back, Whitney Fox on Local Listen. So good to see you again. How are you today?
I'm very well, Jake. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, of course, of course. It's really cool. You were one of the first people that I got to talk to back in 2022, and it's been a while, and I'm really looking forward to catching up. But I want to ask you straight away, with your website and the services that you offer, can you remind people if they don't know who you are, what it is that you offer to this lovely world, and a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind?
Okay, sure, no problem. Yeah, so uh, my name is Whitney Fox, and I do a variety of things in my life, and I actually do offer some services that I've kind of come to find that I've got some talents at. So I have a website. It's whitneyfoxmedium.com, and on there, with the services, you'll find, I do mediumship readings, I do group mediumship readings. I can do some shamanic healing, some shamanic journeying, and spirit animal retrieval. I can even do some soul retrieval stuff. And I do Reiki. I'm attuned to Reiki 3. So that crosses my wavelengths here and there. I kind of like to do that in person. All of these can be done in person or remotely. Especially the mediumship readings, they work pretty well over Zoom. So also the path that it took me to get to that point um, was in large part being a fairly deep meditator and um, uh, psychonaut.
Nice.
So I've had a lot of experience with entheogen ceremonies and a lot of insights and philosophies that have kind of developed from that. So I take the mediumship as a fairly serious form of being in service to spirit. So I'm constantly learning and growing and expanding my thoughts on that and what is actually happening with consciousness. So I guess I could put a fine point on that and say consciousness explorer.
Mm.
So
I
also
can,
read tarot and
yeah.
stuff. And we talked about maybe pulling a couple cards here in the beginning.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I just want to let folks know before we get into the tarot reading, which I'm very excited for. I actually had a cool reading yesterday with Kaylee Burkana. Shout out to you, Kaylee. Hope you're listening. If you are, I appreciate you. She did a great job. It was a full moon stream, and but what I wanted to bring up really quick, just because Whitney, we've chatted before. You were episode, I think it was number 4 back in 2022, and I just
That's
want to let
right.
you know, I don't know if you were aware, but I got the statistics, and I'm not really a big numbers guy, but I think it's worth pointing out for people if they haven't heard our first episode together that our episode was the most listened to episode of the entire. So
What?
I've
Whoa.
recorded 33 episodes. This is going to be
And
number 34, and if people go back and listen to number 4 with myself and Whitney Fox, it's called Ayahuasca Trickster Medicine and Paranormal. The rest of the title cut off, but paranormal something, and it was a wonderful conversation. It was really cool to hear some of those origin stories that got you going, and I know we have a lot left that we didn't get to touch on,
yeah, we
and
we kind
um,
of started on some stuff and
we did, yeah.
we promised to pick it back up because we were
Exactly.
just kind of touching on it. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, isn't that cool? Yeah, I
It
was
is.
beaming and earlier
Because you've
today.
had some bangers, like you've had some great guests and
Thank
stuff.
you. Thank
So
you. Yeah. I'm just having fun here. I mean, it's so cool. Like someone asked me like why do you do it? Like you're not making any money. I'm like, well, I'm getting to have cool conversations with things I want to talk about with people that I really like talking to. So I think
that's right.
it's a
Yeah.
no-brainer. But I wanted to ask you in particular, when I was listening to our previous episode this morning on my way to work, you had brought up the same sort of language around your services, which was being of service. And it's
Mhm.
pretty cool because earlier before we hit record, you were just telling me about this. If you want to correct me, it sounds like a visionary art piece made for someone to kind of complement or accompany their spiritual experience, and it's really cool. It's similar. I brought up Kaylee earlier. She will paint someone's natal chart as a way of
Wow,
a visual
that's cool.
representation of that divine moment when you're born. You want to tell us a bit about this commission, or this type of commission that you're receiving where you're helping someone kind of access a visualization of past experience? It sounds very psychedelic to me.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, um, yeah, so this person in particular, I've done other commissions for people that are want me to in some ways kind of channel the art. I've been an artist for 30 years, and when I had said that, with the mediumship and those services, although there is a fee for them, I really do it to be in service to spirit, right? Because I make, not to sound this way, but I make enough money as an artist. I don't do the spirit stuff to get rich,
Mm.
although there is what do you call it? A prosperity
Yes,
exchange,
value exchange.
a value exchange. And it's not, but with that said, if somebody really wants a reading and doesn't have the money,
Mm.
it's because it's not about that,
Yeah.
and oftentimes, I've done readings for people that, I've just done for free or whatever, and they end up sending me stuff, crystals, or, just because it's how it is. People want to be able to call me again or
Mm.
whatever and not feel as though they're um, taking advantage. And I just don't look at that whole thing in that way at all. So
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway, with the commissions, though, I am an artist and I've been an artist for a long time, and that is how I make my money. So, even though I've given plenty of art away and all of that kind of thing through the years, it's what I do for a living. So I do have a current commission because I just kind of showed you my studio,
Mm.
while what I was up to while I was waiting for you. And this one in particular is a perfect example of the kind of thing. I've done a lot of uh several altar pieces,
Oh.
and so with those altar pieces, the people that have commissioned me to do those are asking me to intuit
Mm.
essentially what their spirit animal or what their imagery, what would be relevant, what I'm bringing through, what would be relevant for them, sort of like a reading, like you said.
Nice.
um,
Yeah.
with the painted birth chart, kind of an
Mm.
intuitive
Yeah.
representation. And, honestly, any artists out there or musicians or creatives, we all know we're channeling something, right?
Right. Right.
So in this particular case, she told me a story about um, a downright religious experience that she had. Just some friends had pulled her out of her regular activities for the day,
Mm.
and they went to the beach, and because she felt, because of her presence, she helped save this distressed and abandoned parakeet on
Oh
the beach.
wow. Yeah.
And now, as the story goes, it was a little bit of a longer story. There was also some sand dollars on the beach. And
Mm.
so here in LA, you don't often see, sand dollars on the beach, but I guess, that hit her as very significant. And there was
Mm.
also starfish. So I know the beach that she was at. I used to live right up at that beach, and those aren't common sights, all three of those things. So that's what's being incorporated into the painting for her. And so she can have this piece in her house to remember this sort of um, a bit of a peak experience for her, so in any case, yeah, like I had said before, that making art, making music, writing, all of those things are, you channel the muse. So I'm kind of marrying the two sort of hats I wear there with this commission piece. So thanks for asking.
Yes, I absolutely love that. And I really love talking to artists or musicians or anyone else who's kind of creating something from within, from that divine spark that we all have, because it places such a positive emphasis on memory, being able to re-access these memories, re-experience them, and kind of immerse ourselves, not to like dwell in the past, but to reflect on what we've been through and what we've seen. Like I could imagine, for those of you who are on YouTube, seeing these paintings behind you, there's some pretty cool memories there. I almost see like an outline of a dog next to you. But
Oh
yeah.
yeah, that
Oh, it's a
it's a giant
rabbit. Oh, I've
rabbit.
seen that one before. Yeah,
Yeah.
that I thought it looked
And then
familiar. Yeah.
that one up there just made it into a juried show, so I'm going to deliver it to San Diego at the end of the month. I don't know if you could see it. Um,
Nice. Yeah.
there was something else I'll point out that is like, to even non-artists, I think they could get behind this idea is, when you're working it a song, a
Mm.
painting or whatever, in this case, a commission, there's intuitive things that come in. And the day that she contacted me, I was in the desert in a crystal store, and I had taken these pictures of this like fossilized mollusk that's got the golden mean, the
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
eye
Fibonacci spiral.
essentially.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the spiral. And so I sent that back to her, and I go, I don't know if this means anything, but I felt like taking a picture of this thing. And she goes, oh my God, I'm so in love with that like sacred geometry. Can you incorporate that into the painting?
Nice,
So
nice.
she and I have gone back and forth with her intuition, my intuition. And so that is also why I find commissions fun, because a lot of it's a collaboration.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't have thought to paint parakeets, but as the painting is developing, yeah, I'm happy for the prompt, I guess.
Mm,
And then I gotta say, mediumship works the same way. Someone wants to work on some stuff with a loved one that's just on the other side of the other soap bubble, if you will.
yeah, yeah.
And I would not have been able to meet that
Mm,
um, loved one. And oftentimes what happens is they'll teach me something.
always.
So my consciousness continues to expand with the teachings of these um, well, teachers from the other side. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. This is a perfect segue because these services, these interactions are really like truly energetic interactions, energetic exchanges with or without money. It's more about like the spirits merging and collaborating, like you said. It's really exciting. And one thing that we're gonna do today, I'm really looking forward to is let's pull a tarot card to open
Okay.
up the rest of this conversation. And then perhaps maybe later towards the end, when we close it out, we could reflect on one last poll, see where we go from there.
Okay. Okay. And so just are you're thinking sort of just a general thought for this podcast, or
Yeah,
are
let's
you pull something for you
we
personally?
could make it a little personal. How about I fill the audience in on a little secret? If anyone's on YouTube watching, you probably noticed that there was a little kitten behind me. Her name is Hershey. She just came home today. I think today marks a new beginning in some way. I've never had a cat before. So I'm already loving the little background noise that I'm hearing from her every now and then. So how about a reading on this particular day and the trajectory forward between my new animal spirit and
Okay, that
yeah,
sounds good. Yep. Sorry about the dead air.
no worries.
Okay. So this is the card that came up.
Nice. Would
Knight
you
of
like to
Cups.
describe what you're seeing for the
Yes,
listeners? Yeah.
for the listeners. Yes. So the Knight of Cups. And so uh I have a fairly basic, I've always been drawn to the right basic Rider Waite.
Mm,
And it's there is it's the Knight of Cups. He's holding one cup. The cup uh in general represents emotion, and the cups up mean full of emotion, and nights are things that sort of come into our lives um rather unexpected, rather
mm.
quickly. And so I think this is appropriate. It doesn't sound like this happened just today that you got your kitten, and so that Hershey came into your life.
Mm,
It's a very playful and happy and full of energy card. And so um in the imagery on the card itself as well, we have a landscape and we have a wandering river. So um symbolically, this could easily represent a long and um, simpatico relationship between you and Hershey. Um, Intuitively, I feel from the card that this also represents a time of your moving into a place of service to this animal.
mm,
And I'll say that I feel that she will be in service to you as well. And it may even though the knight has armor on, he's got a very nice smile and he's got his visor up. So
mm,
he's looking at this new juncture. You are looking at this new juncture in life and allowing in a place that perhaps you didn't allow before. Like you're ready to open up and be vulnerable with your emotions, and that may not have necessarily been the case because of the previous armor that you've worn for various reasons. So that could get a little bit more personal, and we could
Mm.
just kind of leave it at that. But in this particular card, the horse, I think, represents the animal aspect, and the horse is very happy and very excited and very much in service to um, its human partner.
Right,
So
right.
um, I feel reminded to tell you that animals, they don't necessarily look at the world or uh, uh, life like we do. We tend to um, anthropomorphize our animals and think that they're worried because they're alone, or they're lonely, or they're upset about. Uh, in this case, I feel that this kitty uh, very much is going to find her job um, very enjoyable, entertaining you and making you laugh. And I think it's a great partnership. So that's what I got
Thank you
for.
so much. That was really nice. And it's so since we started recording, Hershey was kind of like running around and this is like her first day here. So I was told that, she's gonna be a little apprehensive. And as
Mm,
soon as you started this reading, she ran over to me and
she
jumped up on
sure
the
did.
couch and she even muted you for a second. Like she
She
jumped up
did.
on the
She
computer.
rubbed she rubbed she little face on the camera. That
Yeah.
was cute.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Whitney. That was a really cheerful way to start out. And I'm just
Good card.
basking in this new feline energy. It's really, really fun. It's the perfect kind of chaos, like that trickster chaos that I've been looking for. And what you're seeking is seeking you, I suppose. And
Uh-huh. Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, that's a Knight of Cups is a really good one. Good, full of emotion and positivity.
nice, nice. Well, I wanted to ask you as a means of kind of picking up where we left off in a way. Now, you had told me a really fascinating story about the way you were. I don't want to use the word initiated. Maybe you would think that, but it sounded to me like you went through trials that have sort of tested your spiritual awareness. And now um, we did go through a poltergeist story that you had spoke about with an old boyfriend, and I know there was a cat involved in there. You kind of like saw a cat, and he's like, "I don't have a cat," right? Like,
Yeah.
um, but there was something I wanted to ask you. You had mentioned this connection with your mother, and I was curious if you wanted to get into that story or set any framework or context for this next story because I'm really looking forward to hearing about the formative experiences that got you into this position because I don't know. I can tell just based on how Hershey is acting next to me that your power is coming through this Zoom call at the moment, and it was definitely coming through last time we had spoken. And I appreciate what you do and what you serve to this world. So I'd love to learn more about your origin. So where would you like to begin?
Yeah, we let's talk about that story because there's kind of a lot of angles
Mm,
to it. At least for me, and I think, it's a pretty, I think, a heartwarming story.
nice.
Um, and Hershey is already your little familiar. That's that's awesome. I'm curious how she does tonight, like where she's gonna
Right.
want to sleep and all that. So cute. So okay, yeah. I did re-listen to our last show, but I did it like when we booked this, and so it's been a
Nice.
couple of weeks now. But but in any case, I if I repeat part of something,
Oh, it's totally
forgive me.
fine.
But
Yeah.
yeah, okay. So I I had already had several what mystical experiences, like with various stuff. By the time my mom passed, like I'd had a very dramatic UFO encounter and paradigm changing UFO encounter, and I had a growing, you know, interest from the time I was 11 in all things metaphysical.
Mhm.
It's just it was my wheelhouse. So whatever I was reading, whatever I was, so I was already aware of the other realms, or at least um I was already curious about them. Um, so when um, I was around 33, and my mother, I was very close to my mother. We had, we'd had rocky times, and we had good times. We had bad times.
Yeah.
We had mother-daughter relationship, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But by this time, I was a full adult, and we had made our amends, and had been good for at least a decade. Um, and she had, told me her stories. She'd had quite a traumatic life. I won't get into it, but she did. She had a lot of rough stuff happen.
Mm.
Some of it kind of comes back later. I find out about stuff, and some things become really relevant, her history. So, in any case, she'd had some illnesses through the years, and she had a couple of bouts of cancer and
Wow.
various things. And with that, I grew up in LA, and they had been living in Palm Springs for years. My dad retired young and stuff, but I would go down and I would see them at least once a month. Let's spend the weekend and play golf and play poker, and it's all good. And in any case, the other times that she had bouts of illness, I'd be like, okay, I'll be down this weekend, or I'll see you, like I'll be down. I got a phone call that she fell and broke her hip,
Mm.
and immediately I stopped eating. I
Oh
could
no.
barely drink water. I got this gut feeling. I was like, this is not good. So
Mm.
I was down there immediately. My dad was like, it's okay. She's in the hospital. It's all right. Don't worry about it. Come down this weekend. I was like, nope, I'll be right there.
Mm.
And then from that point forward, I just knew that I'd not had this feeling actually before. I've had it since.
Mm.
Um, and it's if anybody out there that's listening knows what I'm talking about, it's just this knowledge, and there's no going back. I lost 11 pounds in a week. I just stopped eating.
Wow.
Couldn't All I
Yeah.
could eat was antacids.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Because it was like just too much. And so went to see her. They did this hip replacement thing that, it was kind of death by doctor. Every doctor needed there to poke her with something, and
Mm.
she declined very fast. So at the point that she was, my dad and my sister got kind of mad at me because we were talking about, like, they were talking about bringing a hospital bed to the house and stuff, and I just said we're not going to need it, and they
Mm.
got mad at me, and I was like, I don't even know why I said that. And anyway, got to the point where I had been down there for over a week, and I really needed to go home and deal with some clients, and I needed to get more clothes, and my daughters were young. They were 1 and almost 3.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And so I needed to get stuff for them. I needed to check in, make sure my plants weren't dead, like that whole thing. My husband was working in Irvine. So if you know California, it was a drive for him. It was farther south than where we were living.
Mm.
Um, and he had come out and to get me. I can't remember exactly why. I think we were like, he had left his car at work, so anyway, he was down there in the desert with me, and we had one car. And so I had told my mom, I'll see you tomorrow. I'm going to make a turnaround. I'm going to go home tonight, and I'll be back tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then she gave me this look like goodbye. She said,
Mm.
I love you. And I couldn't leave the hospital. It took me like 2 hours just to try and creep out of this hospital, because I kept going back, because I knew. And so anyway, get in the car. My daughters are in the car. My husband's waiting, and we start driving home. We're on the 91 freeway in LA, and I look in the rearview mirror, and there's a white hearse following us.
Oh my
And
God.
so, my husband goes, it doesn't mean anything. Stop with your spooky business. It doesn't mean anything. And so he changes lanes, and
Mm.
I'm looking in the rear view. It changes lanes. A white hearse, like how often? So my mother's color, like her favorite color was white couches, white clothes,
Nice. Yeah.
white car, the whole thing. She loved white. And so I'm like, okay, well, change lanes back. Hearse is behind us still. So, I look at him, and he's like, okay, stop, and so I drop him off at work, and we get to, and then I've got another whatever miles to get back, home. And at the time we were living in an upstairs apartment, and I get there in the middle of the day. We're like right in the middle of the day, and both girls are asleep, which is uncommon for at this point. They'd already napped. They should have been awake, this whole thing, but they're asleep. So I carry them up one at a time, and they didn't wake up, which was not like them. They were like very
Very deep
awake
sleep. Yeah.
children, and so
Yeah.
super deep sleep. So I'm like, okay, and I'm just haven't eaten in a week, and you still can't eat, and like so nervous,
Mhm.
like I'm just she's gonna die. I know it. I don't know how to deal with this gut thing, and so I'm like, okay, well, how about I take a bath with a glass of wine or something? Maybe I'll calm down a little bit because
Mm.
they're sound asleep, right? So I go in and I'm like, drinking in the day, whatever. And
Mhm.
I like it's not even like I could even drink that. I was just so nervous. So anyway, I'm in the bathtub and I haven't been in this house in a week. And there's shampoo bottles up on the, like typical apartment, like window shelf.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
nobody's been here. And I'm sitting in the bathtub and washing my face, and one of the bottles of shampoo falls off the
Oh,
shelf
oh
and
wow.
hits me, not hard, but hits me enough in the
Yeah.
head, like obviously getting my attention. And then I'm actually a little bit scared because I'm like, I didn't touch that. And the window's closed. That
Mm.
how did that fall? And so it's got my attention. Obviously, not a calming bath at all. But I saw a figure walk by the bathroom door, a tall figure, and like I call out to my husband. I know he's not here. He's down in Irvine, 40 minutes away. And of course, it's one of my daughters. They're little,
Mm.
that wouldn't happen. I call out anyway, nothing. So I'm like, oh shit, okay. And I get out of the tub. And I'm in a towel. And as I'm walking by the bedroom, I hear something hit the window. And so first thing I think is like, bird flies into the house, there's going to be a death in the house, sort of like you find
Mm.
a hat on the bed. Like I've heard all these, you
These
know,
signs, yeah.
signs. And so, I'm like, holy crap. I go and I look, and I don't see anything, but what else could have made that sound but a bird flying into the window?
Mm.
And so the phone rings. And this was long enough ago, there was like house phones still. And so I'm like, holy shit. Okay. And girls still asleep, oddly, strangely enough, some sort of somebody told me who I told this story is, oh, that was a banshee, like a
Oh
sort of a
wow.
harbinger of death, that
Yeah,
comes
yeah.
to the house. And that it was a peripheral view, something I saw
Mhm.
already really, really hyper aware, like everything is firing. And so I go to pick up the phone thinking it's my husband, and I pick up the phone, and um it's it's the it's an old friend that I haven't spoken to in a really long time, and she's calling to tell me that she's had a miscarriage. And so
No.
during this conversation, I'm like, why did you like I know we're friends and stuff, but we haven't talked in like a year, like
Mm.
she goes, I don't know, I just felt like you should know. And I was like, and we both cried, and I told her about my mother, and we ended the conversation, and I was like, that's wild. I'm sitting here in a towel still. I'm in the towel from the
Mm.
tub still. And I'm like, what? That's crazy timing, like, okay. And I go to hang up the phone, and I don't even have it hung up all the way, and it rings again, and like I pick it up because it was an old school home, I mean, house.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I pick it up, and I was like, oh, I ask, is it you still? And it was another friend who I also haven't spoken to in like a year. And she is like, I don't know why I felt I should call and tell you, but I'm pregnant. And I'm
Wow.
like, what? And
Huh.
so I'm happy for her. And I'm also got two narratives going in my head, like, okay, this is like, I haven't talked to these people. Anyway, so we hang up the phone, and I'm dumbfounded. I'm like, okay, the universe is for sure trying to tell me something. So I call my husband, and he's not been on board with believing that my mother's going to pass. And so I tell him what just happened, and he got all quiet, and he's like, maybe your mom's going to go. Like that
Mm.
blew his mind, and he is a normie guy. So it kind of blew his mind. And so after those calls, I started to get this kind of sense of calm,
Mm.
like I was starting to understand, and either a download of acceptance, or I can't really explain it. I still knew she was going to go, and still devastated about this, but somehow it's like the energy shifted in
Yeah.
the universe, that I was like, okay, blossom and decay, beginning
Mm.
and end, and all of those things. And so I went about my business, tending to my daughters and dinner and laundry and clients and all that crap, right? And then I told my husband, like, I'm just gonna go to bed and I'm gonna get up and go back down in the morning to Palm Springs. And then I just laid in bed, wide awake, and kept looking at the clock. And I was
Mm.
like, okay, it's 10, it's 11, it's 12, it's 1. And um knowing that she was going to die that night. I just knew. And so, he gets into bed at like midnight. He's like, "What are you doing awake?" And I'm like, "Waiting, I guess," and so around 3:30 in the morning, I we had, like, at the time at this apartment, it was like a Jack and Jill type bedroom bathroom situation.
Oh, I see.
I'd
Yeah.
have the doors open so I could hear them if anything, and I could even see part of, their crib and bed and stuff. And I heard them start to kind of stir in there, like kind of make some noise.
Mm.
And, so I kind of didn't sit up, but I was kind of looking over there, and all of a sudden I heard my mother say shh to them.
Oh, wow.
And
Like
so then
comforting them. Yeah.
I sit up and I'm like, "Oh my God, I just heard my mother in there.
Wow.
She's probably gone." Right. And so I'm not really, you'd think I would have panicked or freaked out or whatever. But then I felt her sit in the rocking chair next to my bed.
Mm.
I just felt her. I could feel,
That
like,
presence.
you know how your mother feels.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It's instinctual.
yeah. And it was also like, it was sort of beyond intuitive. It was somewhat physical. And
Mm.
at that time, I'd already worked with out of body experiences and some lucid dreaming stuff. So if I could say it was similar to that, I was wide awake, but there was a sort of out of body feeling about it a little bit, energetic sort of electricity, I guess is the best way
Mm.
to put it.
Yeah.
And so then I was starting to kind of try and wake my husband up and tell him, and then the phone rang. And so then I went out and I picked up the phone, and my dad was like, "She's gone." And that's when I freaked the fuck out. Like, I was just like, "Blah, my mom died." And like, had
Yeah.
these peaceful moments. And then I was like, "Oh, this isn't just me being, weird. Me and my, like, paranormal stuff. She's gone now." And so anyway, went down to,
Mm.
well, obviously didn't go back to sleep, and, went immediately down there, and, was a hot mess. And, like I even passed out in the mortuary looking at the cremation receptacles. I was just not having it. I was not
Mm.
okay. And so, um, that day after we left the mortuary, as best as I can remember, um, my family got us all into the house, and we're all just trying to deal. My brother was there, my sister was there, my dad. And so it was September, so it was beautiful weather down there. So we've got, like, doors open and all this stuff. And one of the first thing that happened was a hummingbird flew into the house,
Oh, wow.
and it flew right up to my face inside the house.
Oh my
And
God.
so, yeah, and like, because we had dogs and stuff, so the screen was open. And so everybody witnessed it. And this hummingbird had white feathers on its head.
Mm.
And my sister was living with my parents at the time, and she goes, "I've never seen this one before."
Mm.
And then, my brother's like, "Mom," you know,
Yeah, yeah.
because it had white feathers. I've never
That's
seen
so
one with
beautiful.
white
Yeah.
feathers before or since.
Yeah.
And then it zips back outside, right?
Mm.
And so we're just looking at each other, because she absolutely loved the hummingbirds. Those hummingbird
Mm.
nests and right outside her kitchen window every year and all this stuff. And so, kind of tripping. And so about that hummingbird, it stuck around for a year, and then
Really? Yeah.
it died on the 1 year anniversary, which is sort of part of the story. But I was talking at the year anniversary of her passing. I was talking to my sister, and she goes, "Oh my God, our little hummingbird just went down." And then she comes back to the phone, and she goes, "He's dead, and he's right
Wow.
on the porch." And so, like, when have you ever seen a dead hummingbird too? It was almost like it was like a spirit animal. I
One
don't,
year to the day.
of the day. And so so as, like, my grief was, I didn't know what grief was before that. Like, my
Mm.
grandmother died. My grief was so intense that, you know, I couldn't even take my hands away from my eyes.
Mm.
For months, I was just like that, like, hands over
Mm.
my eyes. Would try and work. I'd try and, I like, it was the best I could do to, like, take care of my daughters, and I had a real hard time. So with that real hard time, I was looking for anything, like it was an existential crisis is what it was,
Yeah.
because I thought I knew some stuff. Like I thought, oh, there's an afterlife. Oh, mediums and astrology and mystical experiences and poltergeists and UFOs. Like I got this figured out. I didn't have it figured out. I was like, where are you? I need to know you're okay. I like anybody that's had like intense grief knows what I'm talking about. You're not okay.
Mm,
I absolutely needed some answers, and nothing else would do. I was, like at least I could eat by that time a little, but I had lost so much weight, and I was grief sick was what it was.
mm,
Um, and and it could be because like you I'm one of those people, and I sense you're one of those people, and a lot of the people in this podcast community are like, you can't tell me, you got to show me. Like I can't, I
yeah.
have to know. I can't, so it's
Well
this
said.
thinking, right?
Mm,
um so that is what took me to like I started going on message boards about after death communication. And
mm,
so I had never heard of it before, but I'll be darned, it's a thing. So because the hummingbird, the another thing that had happened that first day too was I was walking by the front door to go to this like dining room thing
mm.
area that we had. And right when I was walking by, the door flew wide open.
Oh,
And
wow.
it
Yeah.
wasn't windy. It was a
Mhm.
really calm day. And again, my brother's like, Mom, so we were, we knew that we all felt
Yeah.
that
You were
if
open to
anybody
it.
was going to like try and tell us she was okay, it was going to be her.
Right.
Because she was open to these things and had, she'd had her own UFO encounter. She'd had what she thought were past life memories and stuff. And she could get down with these topics,
Mhm.
right? And so, but it still wasn't, even though I had those things, it was like I need more. It wasn't enough. And so then I started saying things like, give me signs, because I'm not going to
Mhm.
live with this. I'm going to die of grief sickness. Like, give me signs. So then signs started coming, So one of the things was like exercise was like with after death communication is you give your loved one a sign. You pull something random out of your mind, try and have it somewhat random, but if it's something that can happen, great. If it's something that doesn't really happen, that's fine too. So I said, okay, white bird, because she loved birds. Her name
Mm.
was Jay, so like she loved the blue jay, she loved the hummingbird. So I was like, okay, white bird. I started seeing white birds everywhere. Not
Everywhere. Yeah.
only did I see actual white doves, just like on telephone lines, but I would see white birds on billboards and
Mm.
white birds on, envelopes that would come to the house, TV, whatever. So I was like, whoa, okay, what is this after death communication thing? Like,
Mm.
is this like, am I finding myself inspired to, take a left instead of a right so that I will cross paths with these
Mm.
signs and symbols from the other side? And is this a language that's developing? Like, so that's where my mindset started going. I was like, I am actually communicating with the other side by just following my own intuition and allowing my mother to put these things in my way, so I'm going to survive this grief sickness, right? So I'm very excited about this, because all of a sudden I feel like I'm on the frontier of like communicating with the other side of the
Yeah,
silk bubble,
it's brand new frontier. And speaking of that, I would want to ask you, if someone was going through a type of grief sickness, and maybe they weren't really familiar, or they, have had zero experience with something supernatural or something esoteric, what would you suggest people? And it's also interesting. There's going to be two questions posed here, and you can work
Okay.
with it as you wish. I know it's impossible to answer and it's always speculation, but based on your experiences overall, if say a young child was like, Whitney, what happens when we die? And you've had encounters like this, you probably have you have a unique perspective that perhaps most people don't. So what do you think about all that?
Oh my gosh. What happens when we die? Like that's the ultimate question,
Exactly.
not? And so, and also like I had said, we seekers, we need to experience it ourselves. We can't have someone tell us, right? So I can tell you, or I am telling you how it has gone for me. But like you had started that question was if what I thought you were going to say, and I think you were going to too, is if someone hasn't had any of these experiences, what would you suggest they do if they're having
Right.
in the middle of, or have, you know, I think grief, sickness, and prolonged grief, or grief in general, some grief in general is more manageable than grief sickness.
Mm,
And grief sickness is when you're incapacitated by the grief, which is where I was at. So in a lot of ways, there was a great gift in that because I was desperate. So I was
mm,
seeking all of different protocols with which to pull myself out of this grief sickness so I could, at least go back to work and, take care of my kids and be present because I was so sick with that. So that's where I kind of feel like I do believe, more than kind of, I do believe my mom was like, okay, I need to help this situation. So she came through, I believe, in very strong ways. So one of the, which is, this is also an answer to your question. One of the ways was, and I had read someplace that, other than requesting a sign from them, because I've talked to several people and read and stuff. People will do like $2 bills, or they'll do like Indian head nickel, or things that it's possible you'd see, but not something you'd necessarily see all the time. And then be open to taking a left instead of a right if you feel it, or whatever. Or a song, songs, put your playlist on shuffle, put all of your songs on shuffle, and say, come through, kitty, come through with something that's uniquely yours, and then just allow your intuition to take you. And that's a really powerful, by the way. I know there'll people that will do other divining stuff, like open a Bible to a random verse kind of thing. There's lots of them for sure. So what I had done when I had come across that is I said, okay, 3:30 on Tuesday, I'm going to sit in that rocking chair and I want you to bring me a sign.
mm.
So I did that. I
You got
sat
it
in the
all
rocking
scheduled
chair.
out. Yes.
I scheduled it out. I gave her a couple of days,
Mm,
to work out, at that time in my sort of education, if you
mm,
will. I thought, oh, maybe she needs more time, whatever. So I
mm.
sat in that chair and I sat there for about 15 minutes, projecting love in her direction, and hoping for a sign, listening for any possible thing. And so nothing happened. And I was like, meh, okay, well, maybe next time. Maybe I didn't give you enough time, or whatever. However, I got up and I walked down the hall and I walked through the kitchen. And when I walked by the microwave, I think I was home alone, girls were asleep or something. When I walked by the microwave, it made this low pitched, long, growly beep.
Mm.
And it had never made that sound before, and it never made that sound again after.
When
And
you
so I
least
just
expected
stared at
it.
that thing when I least expected it. And it wasn't it wasn't a beep, it was just this little electrical manipulation. And I
Mm.
went, I'm going to take that, because, and then I thought, okay, well, if I'm gonna give my microwave some time if it's going on the fritz, but it's not like I put anything in the microwave or anything. It was just
Yeah,
when I was
just sitting
walking
there
by,
minding its business. Yeah.
minding its business. And I thought, well, and especially at that time, like, I know that there is many instances of electrical things being manipulated
Mm.
energetically. And so I took that as I'm gonna, that, okay, nice one, mom, like,
Right,
way to get
right.
that one through. And so then after that, obviously still in grief, but starting to kind of, you know, not come out of the grief, but also like, change my paradigm.
Mm.
Like, we can, I'm starting to really believe we can communicate with those, and they can communicate with us if they're motivated, and there's a need. And so there was another instance that I was crying on my bed, had my hands on my eyes, and I just said 3 times, I just said, I love you, I love you, I love you, just like that. And then I was finished crying, and I got up and I'm like, okay, I got to do something.
Mm.
But I felt like I just felt compelled to go to my bookshelf.
Mm.
And I did. And there's like various books, a nice big bookshelf. And I pulled out my dad's Bible. And for some reason, I mean, this was my intuition, right? And maybe my subconscious had buried this. I don't think so, because I opened the Bible and a green Post-it note fell out. and it was my mom's handwriting, and it said, "I love you, I love you, I love you."
Oh, so
And so
beautiful.
like what, so it was, so each one of these things, I was like, my vibration was like raising, I was
Mm.
pulling out of this like deep, dark grief and starting to come out the other side with a completely different way of thinking.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there were several, there's probably another dozen or so of things that were very significant to me. Um, and like one in particular is I had brought her purse home, the purse that she had been using the
Mhm.
whole time, and there was various photos and stuff. And I came into my bedroom over kind of where the purse was, and there was like a little square school photograph of me that was in the purse, but it was on the floor. And um when I turned it over, it just said 12 years old. And I was like, I wonder how that got out,
Mm.
And I asked my husband, of course, no, the girls were not big enough to get to it. And I was like, well, I mean, because it's not like I was digging around in the purse. It's not like I was doing anything with it. It was
Yeah.
just sitting there. I was like,
Seemed pretty
okay.
mysterious to just
It
fall
was like,
out
that's
like
pretty
that. Yeah.
mysterious. And so it comes back later. Um, so it was after a few months, at the time I was doing a lot of art projects and people's houses, a lot of murals and,
Mhm.
faux finishes and things like that. And I started thinking I want to talk to a medium. I think I'm going to look for a medium. And
Mm.
so, like I thought, okay, well, give me a sign, like, because now we're doing signs all the time, like, give
You're getting them
me
more
a
and more
sign
frequently. Yeah.
if that's a good idea. And it was pretty much feast or famine back in those days as an artist. So like to take the money to talk to a medium was, I've got like two little kids, and so I was like, okay, if I get a job that's like 2 grand or more, I will just take the money off the top and no one will ever even notice.
Mhm.
And sure enough, the next day I got a phone call from this, a woman in a high-end house, somewhat connected to Hollywood a little bit. And she almost on the spot hires me to do this wraparound mural in her guest room.
Nice.
And so back then, the internet was totally different. I like to for images, I had to like scrounge different places, libraries, magazines for reference material because she wanted this tropical scene, right? So I'd gone to a travel agency and picked up a bunch of brochures. And so, she hires me, start doing this job. I didn't tell her anything. I didn't tell her I was in grief. This woman, I didn't tell her that I was looking for a medium, nothing. And so uh I did this job, have all these travel brochures out in front of me. End of the week, I'm wrapping up the project and I'm leaving her to like beautiful house, right? And I'm walking down the stairs and we become friendly. And incidentally, I had heard her having a conversation with someone on the phone pretty loud, like right outside the bedroom. And I was like, oh, I'm trying not to eavesdrop, but whoa. And so she's speaking to this wife of a celebrity who you would know, and they had just lost a child. And so I heard them talking about mediumship, and I was like, whoa, like, first of all, weird, they're
Mm.
talking to this celebrity's wife, and B, they're talking about mediums. Like, see, this lady is the one that called me the very next day. Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I couldn't even tell you how she found my number, the whole thing. Anyway, so I'm cleaning up and I'm walking down the steps, and she just says to me, have you ever considered talking to a medium? And I just turn around, I look at her on the stairs, and I'm like, why did you ask me? And she's like, I don't know, I get a feeling about people. And I go, my mom just died, and I'm taking money off the top of this check uh to call a medium. And she's like, I had a feeling. And then she told me a little story, you know, uh, unrelated, but a mediumship story. And I was like, wow. So, dude, I've got my signs, like this is
Mm.
meant to be. And so, gives me my check, and, I tell my husband this is what I'm doing. And so then I get home and I'm sitting at, this computer, and I'm starting to kind of scroll for mediums, like how am I going to find one?
Gotta find the
She
right
had
one.
told me if I didn't find someone that she could refer me to someone.
Mm.
And I felt like, at the time, especially, I thought, well, she's got some connection, so she probably does know a decent one. And that was going to be plan B. But then I thought, well, I'm just going to look first. And then I came across this page, and it's got an animated GIF of a white bird.
Oh, of course it does. Yes.
Of
Yes.
course it does. And then right then, I hear like a tapping on the window above the computer, and I look up and there's a blue jay.
Oh
And
my
so
God. Yeah.
even though we got blue jays in the neighborhood, like randomly, like one tapping on the window, and I hadn't seen one in probably a couple of years. Like I was overloaded. Like
Mm.
I was like, okay, mom, I get it. I get it. Okay, this is the one. Book the I booked the session, and this woman's name, her mediumship name is Okala. I don't think she's practicing anymore, but she was absolutely astounding. I had 3 readings with her, and what part of like kind of one of the stories that I wanted to tell when we were talking before, because I think we touched on this subject. Um, well, first of all, when she first starts the reading, she says, "Oh, she describes my mother to a T, and uh, and says, your mom says that you've got a bunch of travel brochures around you. Are you going to travel?" And I went, no, no, I just did a project with like a bunch of travel brochures. And she's like, okay, okay. So that was like one of the first. And then when my hair was always brown, and when my mom died because hers was blonde, I dyed it blonde,
Nice.
And
Yeah.
then she goes, the medium goes, oh, your mom's saying she likes your blonde hair, So she
Oh
did
my
a
God.
bunch
Yeah.
of like really cool, uh, identifying things. But then she got into some kind of heavy stuff almost
Mm.
immediately. And so her the big thing throughout all 3 readings that she wanted to talk about was the mind body connection, illnesses being connected to uh trauma, previous trauma. And so I didn't know any of that. I didn't understand. I'd never even heard that concept. So here, like learning about that through this medium, um uh from my mother, again, a complete paradigm changer. So the way that she explained it was, so because it happened a few times, but I'll tell you this one story because this was the most powerful one, and then we can move on. But the reason that I really like this story is because it had some benefit in the real world, not only just helping me heal from grief, but also understanding a very powerful concept, which is the mind body connection. So I believe it was the second reading, and I was getting ready to talk to her, and I was getting chronic sinus infections about every year. About every summer I would
Mm.
get a summer cold, and then it would turn into a sinus infection, and this is exactly what was happening. And so I was like, oh crap, like before, and right before I was scheduled to talk to her, I'm like, well, maybe I've got some antibiotics from the last one. I don't want to go to the doctor, but sinus infections are really like um identifiable, like just throbbing head and like pressure and the whole thing. So I go to look in the cupboard, and I find that there's some like amoxicillin in there, and I pull it out, and I'm like, whoa, it's exactly today's date, but a year ago.
Mm.
And I was like, that's crazy. Like, okay, random. But my intuition was sort of like, that's that's wild. Like, and then it also, not coincidentally, it was the exact birthday of this creepy uncle I used to have. And
Mm.
so I was like, huh, that's wild. So anyway, I get on the phone with her, and first thing she wants to talk about is that I had a sister who had some mental issues, and she goes, you've got a sister, older sister. And then she even like almost got her name was Marion, and she's like, oh, Mary. And I was like, yeah. And so she's sitting there, and she goes, did Marion get taken away from you? Were you
Mm.
guys very close and she got taken away? And then so I'm like, yeah, this is taking a quick dark turn. She did get taken away. And she's like, oh yeah, your mom's saying like in the middle of the night or something, and you didn't know where she went. And I went, that's true. And she goes, ooh, she goes, did she get sent off to like your uncle, like a creepy uncle? And I went, she did, because she was
Mm.
starting to get into some like drugs and stuff. And so I guess my parents thought it was a good idea to send her off to my uncle. This uncle was creepy, very creepy. And I found out much later in life how creepy he really was from my mother. And um, but I didn't know this at the time. I was a child. All I knew is that I was abandoned by the sister I love very much, created a trauma. Turns out she was sent away on my uncle's birthday. And
Mm.
so then, so through the medium's like, oh, I'm kind of learning something right now. Your mother's saying, she goes, are you kind of sick right now? And I went, yeah, I am. And she goes, so your mom is trying to say that like the trauma of your sister being taken away and that abandonment issue, you've manifested as like a sickness.
Mm.
And I went, and then I, of course, remembered the previous hour looking at the amoxicillin bottle and having it the same exact date. And then remembering that annually, every year, I was getting this sinus infection as a result of this unresolved trauma slash grief told to me by my mother and through a medium, like, so anyway, the medium is like, well, your mom says, she's asking for forgiveness and forgive
Mhm.
yourself, forgive her, forgive your uncle and all that stuff. And I was like, oh, well, I'm going to work on this.
Mm.
And then she kind of led into this other thing. And she's like, oh, your mom's showing like a boat ride you guys took once.
Mm.
And I was like, yeah, we took one boat ride on a sailboat and I got super seasick, and my mother was like really excited about this boat trip and didn't want to turn the boat around, the whole thing. And she's like, well, she's apologizing for that too. And then she's like, and she's still kind of on about that psychosomatic trauma stuff. Like she wasn't very nurturing, was she? And I was like, no, she wasn't. And so then she goes, okay, well, do some work on figuring out like what's going on there. And so
Mm.
after that reading, I sat with it and then I meditated on it and recalled that wasn't able to go to movie theaters because I would get motion sickness. Like I
Oh
couldn't watch movies.
wow. Yeah.
And
Mm.
so then through that, you know, uh, sort of discovery slash forgiveness, I was able to let go of both of those things. So after that, I never got another sinus infection, and I don't get seasick in theaters anymore. I don't get motion sickness because I would get motion sickness with various things. So I was suppressing these, this moment where my sister was taken away from me, and then
Yeah.
also suppressing this moment that my mother was not very nurturing, and I was afraid. And so through that, then of course, I went down lots of rabbit holes, reading everything that Louise Hay ever wrote,
Yeah.
and understanding the mind body connection and working with that with
Let me
various
comment
things.
really quick just to add in
Yeah, sorry.
because no, it's quite all right. And just really quickly, you just reminded me when I was younger, and I don't know, this ended probably when I was entering puberty, probably like middle school. Like, so I would get strep throat every single year, or sometimes multiple times a year. I've been trying to figure out while you're talking, like, I wonder where that was coming from because it's strange. When I first met like my first ever Reiki teacher, and she was talking to me about astrology and how a Taurus sun sign, you're ruled by Venus, and your throat is like the central area of your body associated with your sun sign. All
Yeah,
this, and I was like,
we're both
weird.
Taurus sun sign. Yeah,
Yeah, bull gang.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and now I would be interested in looking into that. And so you were saying, you've established this almost undeniable connection to this somatic truth, this gnosis through the mind body connection. And you said you started reading books by whom? I don't know. I don't
Oh,
recognize the author you had mentioned.
Louise Hay.
Louise
So
Hay.
have you ever heard of like Hay House Publishing?
I have, yeah.
So she started that years ago.
Oh,
Honestly, I'm not sure if she's still with us or not, but I think her very first like groundbreaking book is called You Can Heal Your Life. And it's
oh, that
all
does sound
about,
familiar. Yeah.
okay, yeah, it's all about that topic. And then she's got through there's like a glossary that and you could just like Google Louise Hay remedies or Louise Hay affirmations. So essentially, when you look that up or read that book or get some of her material, then you sort of look at the part of the body.
Mhm.
And a recent one that I looked at, so just to illustrate it, is I have arthritis in my elbow, right?
Mhm.
And so elbows represent like a juncture or a corner or a turning or a direction. And
Interesting.
so,
Yeah.
with the so with that, you can kind of look at the ailment, the part of your body. You can do affirmations to kind of turn that around, redirect the energy. What is sort of an additional thing with this experience that I feel like I learned with my from my mother was that there are also time elements to it, or
Hmm.
at least there was with me, with being on the anniversary of my sister being taken and me manifesting it on this, like, in a solar return kind of way, if you
Yeah,
will.
yeah.
Like the sun comes back around again in that
Hmm.
same point, and it triggers. I mean, honestly, I think that we are very complicated machines, and we subconsciously absorb everything, whether it's,
Hmm.
where the planets lie in the sky, or if what's blooming outside, or
Yeah.
various triggers and prompts that our subconscious gets. And that was gosh, it's been over 20 years now that I had that experience, but I've come to learn and come to have thoughts that we are very complicated uh creatures, and our body is really intelligent.
Yeah.
Our bodies will tell us, and it really is the anchor to this 3D realm.
Hmm.
um, the body, because without it, we're not anchored here. And so it's our teacher, and it's our if we're not paying attention, then we get ill. We're not paying attention to unresolved trauma, kind of thing. So anyway, that's why the main reason I really love that story is, not only was it very healing and also mind opening, but it really kind of taught me something. And
Hmm.
everybody I told the story to kind of responds like you did, like, I've got a repetitive
Yeah,
something.
right. I'm sure
You know,
everyone's got something like that, that like kind of like something that they just kept on popping up and maybe weren't so sure why. And yeah, I'm really fascinated to look into it. And earlier you had mentioned this feeling of like electricity. This was when you were telling the story about like receiving signs and feeling a presence, physical or metaphysical. And I want to ask you, as we kind of wrap up, I can't believe time is flying by.
I know.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Uh,
I talk so much. Oh my
no,
God.
it's quite all right. You're my favorite kind of guest, and I was happy to sit back and listen. I named it Local Listens for a reason. But you've been wonderful. And I'm so happy. I know for a fact we're gonna be doing this again and again.
Perfect.
So yeah, electricity leads me to a question about Kundalini, and I want to give you a little backstory.
Yeah.
Eventually I'm going to ask you about my friend and this concept of like spontaneous Kundalini awakening. But for me, I want to start by telling you that I feel like my experience with that came through dreams, or that sleep paralysis realm in between sleeping and waking. And I've never really I've told this story briefly on one podcast. I actually did it on my birthday, which is kind of cool. Shout out to Jay Hanahan on the How to Kill a Sacred Cow podcast. Anyways, my first dream that really like woke me up, which is ironic to say, is that I was in my house, a young child, and there was a spiral staircase which did not exist. Like I've actually searched for the spiral staircase. I was like, well, I was dreaming about it. It's got to be here somewhere, but there was no spiral staircase. It was just randomly placed in my house somewhere in this hidden area of my home. So I went up the spiral staircase and opened the door, and I noticed that this dream was black and white. Already kind of weird. There's this theme, almost like a Gemini energy, and this will make more sense when I share this next part. Black and white, spiral staircase that mysteriously popped up out of nowhere. And I open this door and I see these two women sitting there naked on the bed, beautiful. And I'm like, wow, okay, this is a very novel experience. And I woke up like immediately after that. But ever since, I was like, there's something being told to me through this dream. The spiral staircase is something I've got to find. And obviously, like in the physical world, I never found it. And years later, I got into lucid dreaming. I wanted to figure out how I could how I could direct this movie that I'm experiencing every night. And one day, I've learned this technique where you wake up and then you go back to bed. Wake back to bed is what it's called, WBTB. And what had happened, which is great living in New England. I'm in Texas now, thank God, but in Connecticut, we would have a lot of snow days. So I woke up, realized I didn't have school. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm going the fuck back to bed because I need sleep. Went back to bed and I fell into this sleep paralysis realm. And I felt like
Wow.
I was being electrocuted and I could hear electricity. Like my body went totally numb. It was as if my body had fallen asleep. My mind was still awake. And I felt this electricity like running through me, and I could hear and see like flashes and shocks. And I felt like as I've studied this and as I've looked into it, I feel like that was some kind of Kundalini running through me. And I don't know for sure, but it's a fun subject. And my friend recently had a similar experience with like a spontaneous, visionary experience that felt electrifying. And I'm curious, do you have any comments on maybe the nature of this toroidal field, this electromagnetism that we're all a part of, and how that might relate to this mystical concept of Kundalini?
Yeah, I do have some thoughts on that and have experienced that, both with various out of body and, you know, uh, plant medicine stuff. And so, um, I think the short answer really is that there's different frequencies. The frequencies that exist are infinite, and in our 3D realm, the consensus reality that we're all, you know, driving our cars and going to Costco in, or um, when we shift out of that frequency, but we're aware, we've got our 3D mindscape still holding on to awareness of our identity, then physically we feel that. I think it's very common to I've heard and read that when people are having out of body experiences, they'll hear a pop or a loud bang,
Yeah.
so I, I think there's all manners of various frequencies that we drift in and
And
out
that
of.
pop is also very much correlated to DMT as well.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So I had one DMT Bufo ceremony, and I didn't get the pop, but I did have a full near-death experience, or death
Wow.
experience, if
Yeah,
you
yeah,
will,
yeah.
tunnel and everything. But I didn't hear the pop. So, and with the out of bodies I've had, I haven't felt heard the pop, but I have felt the electricity. And
Mm.
so I do think there's a correlation. When we talked about, uh, I had had some what I assumed or called poltergeist experiences when I was young. I'm starting to kind of change my view on that because you know more, you
Yeah.
wait more. But some of those new views sort of have to do with perhaps there's a time slip. The 3D consensus reality is on a certain time frame, time scale, which, that's a whole other topic to get into. Missing time. People have UFO encounters, and and there's missing time. Uh, Time is just relative to the 3D that we're living in. In the next vibration or frequency over, uh, perhaps time is uh not the same, or maybe it's out of time. So maybe that's what part of the kundalini experience
Mm.
is
Yeah.
going from a 3D timescape to non-linear time realm. So
Mhm.
I think well, because you talk about a lot of heavy topics, like sometimes the language fails us with
Oh
ways to
yeah.
describe these
Yeah.
things. So um I think maybe with English that might be. I'm sure, I've said this before. I'm sure the Germans have a better word for it, or a better
Yeah,
phrase
yeah.
for
The Russians,
it.
maybe. Yeah. You've reminded me of what Terrence McKenna would often say. He would be like, we're usually killed by astonishment. Like our English language just fails to capture what we just saw, what we just felt, what we just experienced. And we can only try. And that's all we've got to do is try. And even if
Yeah,
we can pull back one little grain of truth in whatever we just experienced, who knows? It might help someone, it could inspire someone.
it's
And
true.
it's
It's true.
quite
And,
quite
you
beautiful. We're
know, I,
tapping into something timeless.
I was talking last night with Brandon from Expanding Reality, who that the guy like you
I love
can
Brandon.
go, just can go down any rabbit hole and not get
Yes, he
lost.
can. Yeah.
I love
He
that
did the whole
about
ABCs except for a couple letters. X, Y, and Z we kind of left out. But X and Y. Yeah.
But the topic got pretty heavy and deep about the actual, nature of reality, and
Yeah.
the what infinite actually really means.
Mm.
So I think it's these conversations really that are going to kick the ball down the field and sort of understanding and rising to a new expanding reality,
Yeah,
and
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
a level of understanding. And how I had told him, what I want to, I think it was maybe when you two were talking. It was something I was listening to him recently, and I actually felt like I had a bit of a uh, altered state of consciousness just
Mm.
hearing the conversation.
I
And
can
so I
relate.
think
Yeah.
there's kind of, I've had that a couple of times where I sort of feel like my brain just got
It's
broken a
like a
little bit,
transference of energy sometimes. You listen to the
and
right podcast at the right time, and sometimes it just snaps something.
opens your mind in a
Yeah.
way, it changes your paradigm even
Yeah.
ever so slightly, and then coming back to your reality that you had before isn't quite the same.
Mm.
So, I mean, that's why I love these. I love this whole community because,
Well
like,
said. Well said. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's good. So,
Yeah.
any,
Well, there's a perfect segue here as we wrap it up because we were just talking about infinity, and when I think about infinity, I think about immortality, and I think we can immortalize this particular moment. I'll say for myself and Whitney, if you would like to pull one more card, I have a much different direction I'd like to take. So what I'm gonna say now is currently as I'm speaking, it's 7:10 p.m. Central Time here in Texas. It's January 17th, 2023. And
well,
Whitney and I are about to immortalize this moment here with this tarot card, this conversation, and everything else that we continue on after we stop recording. And what I want to do is would you like to draw a card for the audience, for whoever's listening, whether you're listening in 2024 or maybe they're going to listen, anytime we're going to immortalize this moment with this card, with this conversation, this energy exchange. So whenever you are ready, if you have any thoughts
idea.
before you pull, I'd love to try
Um,
something. I've never done this before. So
yeah, okay, I love this idea. Let's see what comes up. Oh, how interesting. Uh, okay, so the Justice card,
mm,
um, it's got a person, it, Lady Justice with the scales and the sword pointing up. That's how it looks. Two columns. There's a purple curtain behind her. She has a crown and a jewel at the third eye. So, in the context of your question for um, those that might listen in the future, or in the context of their life, this would be sort of um, world question. So um, a reading, mini tiny reading for the world we live in and how our culture is to me. So the Justice card always means that justice will be served, the truth will be known. So whatever is fair. So you also said to, like, for people in their personal lives that might be listening to this, and what that is, what that might mean
mm,
to you, to me. Justice means that essentially uh, you'll get what you give.
mm.
So we could, the love you give is equal to the love you get, kind of thing.
Yeah, I love the Beatles.
Yeah. So essentially, walking around in your life, if there's a problem, if there's something unsolved, understanding that what you've given is what you'll get. And that's what the
Mm,
Justice card means. So if you are in service, you will be served. If you are in charity, you will receive charity. Do unto others, kind of thing. And
yes.
also, forgive the forgive our trespasses as we forgive the
Mhm.
trespasses that have been put upon us, the Lord's Prayer. So justice is the up and the down, and meeting in the middle with the even scales. So I think that's a beautiful card, especially in these, like, I suppose, I was going to say in these troubled times,
Hmm.
but if you look at them as troubled times, they are. If
Yeah.
you look at them as beautiful, enlightening times, they most certainly are. Both sides
Also
of,
true. Yes.
yeah, yeah. So there you go.
That feels like such a cool full circle moment there, because justice does require service, and we all have something unique to offer as our service, whether that's an ear to listen, a kind word, or maybe, as Brandon says, pull into that right lane if someone's behind you, let them pass, don't text and
Yeah.
drive, etc. But it's
You know what
really
I think he
lovely.
also said? I don't know if he was quoting, but I think it's figure out what your gifts are and give them away. I
Yes,
love
yeah,
that. I think
exactly.
that's, whatever those gifts are, um, uh, bring light to the world, with them.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. It's like whoever
'Cause
said,
people are like, what am
you
I doing here? I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Well, that's just it. Find a gift, however big or small,
yeah,
and
exactly. It's like
way.
there's the day that you're born, and then there's the day that you realize why you were born. And it's something I've been thinking about a lot lately. And I appreciate your wonderful gifts, Whitney. This is always a pleasure. I am still amazed how time has passed so quickly. It's
Me too, Jake.
unbelievable, but this has been
Yeah.
fantastic. And would you like to leave the audience with any last message or any contact info? I'm going to, of course, have your links in the show notes, but do
Okay.
you want to leave them with anything else?
Oh, gosh, you know what? I'm really enjoying these podcasts, these interviews and stuff. And I love hearing from people because I have gotten some great messages and there's some deep thinkers out there.
Mm.
And, like it's just, I love that. So, and then if, anybody's interested in, if they want a reading or something, just you can contact me through Instagram or leave a Instagram message or through my website, which is whitneyfoxmedium.com. And then my Instagram is at tricksterfox7. So, anyway, yeah, Jake, we'll do it again sometime. Okay. Like when you're ready to talk again, we'll pick up the conversation again.
Rock on, rock on. And Hershey's meowing in the background. She says, wonderful to meet you tonight. And thank you so much. You're a true blessing. And I'm so happy to see you again. Have a
Yeah,
wonderful night.
likewise. Okay, you too.
Thank you.